Hello everyone. Okay, I'll try to go fast. It'll be a different tone. So far we've been talking about tech and what we can build. I'm going to talk about what we maybe shouldn't build. So why crypto has no privacy layer, but it should. So who am I? I've been working in the privacy space for like a long time. We started Ironfish in like 2019, and slowly but surely we're making it to our goal. And been working in this space for roughly 5 years, and we still don't have a privacy layer. And so why is that? So this is what I want to do. I want to send money from account A to account B privately. And what protocol out there can facilitate that transaction right now? And just as a caveat, it needs to work well, and it cannot let the bad guys use the privacy protocol as well. It's a pretty important factor in all this. So crypto's had a number of attempts at privacy. We had the OG privacy protocols that were super monolithic. So these are Monero, Zcash, Grin, Beam, etc. And now we have like the next generation of privacy protocols. These are typically ZK-based, interoperable, or a little more exciting, but typically not really ready for use as of now. So back to this. What protocol can achieve this? And the truth is there aren't any. So some protocols have great cryptography, but are not interoperable. So I can't use Zcash to send USDC. Some privacy protocols use enclaves, which I think is cheating. Some privacy protocols have actually pivoted away from privacy. And I've seen a number of teams go do totally different things because they don't think the space is viable. Some privacy protocols have killed off their own products, but will relaunch. A lot of protocols have not even launched yet. Super promising, cool tech, etc. But mainnet is still a year out every single year. And some privacy protocols have launched, but we're not quite there yet, and that's Ironfish. We're trying our best, and I'll kind of get to it. But I can't use Ironfish to send USDC as of now, but soon. Some privacy protocols do exist on other chains. I kind of put the slide as a caveat because there's a lot that kind of quote-unquote exist, but like don't really have users. And then the one privacy protocol that actually did or would have let me send USDC privately got sanctioned. So I'm not allowed to say the name. But this protocol is quite incredible because it got sanctioned. The governance token was hacked. The founders were arrested. And it's still top 40 on DeFi Llama. It still has 500 mil TVL. That's incredible. Like that actually shows that privacy is in demand despite everything going wrong with the protocol. And so for the privacy protocols out there, it is like Squid Games. You're kind of like, oh no, am I next? And so there's no protocol that's currently allowed to do this. And I'm not going to talk about the technical problems of how to achieve privacy. Those are super fascinating, but not this talk. We're going to talk about how do you make regulators happy. So how do we as protocol developers build something that genuinely deters bad actors and makes regulators comfortable? So typically we care about Gary Gensler and the SEC and like, can we tweet out a roadmap or can we tweet a blog post about a partnership announcement? And that's great, and you should maybe worry about that. But for tonight, we're going to worry about this, which is the Treasury Department. And typically, we're going to worry about these two things. So to summarize, we're going to worry about FinCEN and OFAC and how they relate to privacy protocols as of today. But I really want to say that it's kind of like a thing that will move to bridges and L2s. So disclaimer, I'm not your lawyer. I'm not even a lawyer. And this is gross oversimplification. So for FinCEN, we're going to care about something called the Bank Secrecy Act. So FinCEN really cares about regulating what they call MSBs. MSBs are money transmitters or money service businesses. And they require that they have regulatory things like reporting suspicious activity or preventing money laundering, terrorism funding, et cetera. So you're like, okay, well, that's a cool thought, like fun fact. But what makes you a money transmitter? Why should I care about this? And by you, I mean, what makes your protocol a money transmitter? And in 2019, FinCEN actually defined that privacy protocols themselves are not money transmitters. Okay, that's great. But then this happened. So the Tornado Cash founders were indicted by the U.S. government on 3 counts. And the second count was conspiracy to operate an unlicensed money transmitter business. And you're like, well, wait a minute, but you said protocols were not MSBs, so how come they're being indicted for having an unregistered MSB? And if you were to read the court case. The TLDR for why is that relayers provided customers with a service in exchange for a fee. And so you can kind of interpret that as, a protocol provided users with a service that produced revenue. And you're like, okay, well, wait a minute. Doesn't that mean that bridges and L2s, especially ones with a single sequencer, are also MSBs because their entire business model is to take fees from transaction fees by moving funds as a service. And so the reason a privacy protocol is now being charged for this quote unquote crime, but it is relevant for crypto as a whole. All right, but there is something even scarier than FinCEN, which is OFAC. FinCEN, they actually have to prove that you had intent, but OFAC doesn't have to. So for OFAC, all you have to know is you do not touch the sanctions list. And it's extremely unforgiving because, again, they don't have to prove intent. If you touch the sanctions list, it doesn't matter if you did this unknowingly, et cetera, you're actually at fault, and it could lead to criminal prosecution. So what does this mean for protocols? So again, OFAC actually, in their FAQ by the Tornado Cash sanctions, they actually did say that it's not applicable to privacy-preserving software itself. However, again, the founders were arrested for this, and on count 3, they literally said that they violated sanctions. And the argument is actually nuanced. And the reason why I say this is because, again, it can be applicable to pretty much all of DeFi and all of crypto. The argument that they use is that since Tornado ran its own relayers, like Tornado was the company, ran its own relayers and received fees as part of that service, they received fees by definition from sanctioned addresses, and therefore developers themselves violated those sanction rules. And again, it's kind of scary and should be applicable to more projects because if you are a single sequencer and you're not doing sanction screening, then by definition you are actually taking fees or taking money from a sanctioned address, potentially. And right now, obviously, this is not being enforced, at least not for bridges or L2s. Obviously, it's being enforced for the privacy protocol, but it can't. Okay, so back to this. So how do we design this that's not a money transmitter and doesn't let bad actors in? And it's actually kind of hard. So there's various things you can do. So when you have money coming from a transparent environment to a private environment, that is when you have the most information about what is going on. So what you could do, for instance, is you could have kind of an intermediary decision maker. So first an account goes to, let's say, a bridge or a smart contract bridge, and that's when you actually have the most kind of control. And then you can go to a privacy protocol. Now, obviously, it's well, someone has to make that decision. Is your service more centralized? And the answer is yes, but maybe that's okay. And that's actually exactly how Ironfish is going to be working. We are working with bridges that are more centralized than you might prefer with ideology reasons, but they do all the sanction screening for us, and they're pretty careful in terms of who they let in onto the privacy platform. And then you can have transactions happen within the privacy protocol itself, and there's various things you can do to kind of screen transactions while they are in the privacy pool. And those are fairly not great options, although people have tried them. So one of the approaches is having a global view key. So if you're familiar with Espresso and Cape and that project, they actually attempted this, and they're one of the privacy protocols that pivoted away from privacy altogether because it's really hard to pull off. You can put an encrypted tracer. It's something that academics are thinking of right now of how do you trace transactions within the privacy pool but still preserve privacy, but then potentially decrypt it if something goes wrong. And that's logistically very hard as well. You could do consensus enforced block lists, which we actually did think about quite a lot. But then you go into a Pandora box of other problems. Like if you have a bunch of validators or miners around the world, do you force a miner in Russia and China to conform with a U.S. sanctions list? Like Nancy Pelosi's technically on the Chinese sanctions list. What do you do there? So then you can kind of look at the egress. So this is money coming out of the privacy protocol, and that's actually pretty hard. So the only kind of approach that sort of worked is association sets, and this is the Amin Vitalik paper, if you're familiar with that, and kind of how it works. And the idea is once you're coming out of the privacy protocol, you can say I'm not going to tell you I'm Alice. I'm going to tell you that I'm either Alice, Bob, Carla, or David, but I'm definitely not Eve because Eve is bad, and we know Eve is bad. And unfortunately, it's actually really hard to pull off because you have to know that Eve is bad. And it's really hard to know if Eve is bad because if you're a hacker, you move extremely fast, way faster than someone can detect whether or not you're bad. And so association sets, TLDR, are not quite good. Am I honest? humble personal opinion. Cool. I know that went fast, but if you want to learn more, Iron Fish Crypto is our Twitter handle, and that's where we do all our announcements. Cool. Thank you.